Hey guys, it's Josie with Queen My Pawn. I'm going to be showing why 0 times 0 equals 0. This may seem a little bit obvious, but if someone doesn't know any math at all, they might actually start to wonder, why do you multiply anything to get 0? And why is it that when you multiply 0 by 0, it gives you 0? I mean, one of my students was actually wondering that, and I was perplexed as to how to answer it. But then I studied it a little bit more, and it's not that obvious to prove why 0 times 0 equals 0. Let's start off by multiplying two numbers, A and B. I'll use the dot for multiplication. And let's say that one of these numbers was actually 0. So let's take A to be 0. Okay, and that means I can rewrite A equaling 0, and then I just multiply by B. No problem there. Now, let's assume that B does not equal 0 as well. And later on, I'll show a case where B does equal 0. For now, let's assume that B doesn't equal 0, okay? And I should have started more over here. If B doesn't equal 0, using the law of multiplicative inverses, you know that B has an inverse. For example, if B was 7, it's not a 0, and 7 times 1 over 7 equals 1. This is its inverse. When you multiply a number by its inverse, you get the identity, 1. Same thing with addition. If you add a number to its inverse, you get 0, the identity. 1 is the multiplicative identity and 0 is the additive identity. That means that I can do b to the power of -1, which actually is the inverse, okay? In case you don't know about powers yet, b to the -1 can be rewritten as 1 over b. Just a sneak peek, just like b to the -2 can be rewritten as 1 over b squared, but that's not really relevant to the discussion. I'm just showing you what the notation can really be. So in the end, we get 0 times b times b's inverse. I group them together using association, and that will give me 0 times 1, because b is a non-zero number, and every non-zero number has an inverse. And when you multiply the number by its inverse, it's just 1. And look at that, it's the identity. 1 is the identity, meaning anything multiplied by 1 will be the same number. So 0 times 1 has to be 0. And we have arrived at the conclusion that any number, any number that's not 0, when multiplied by 0, will give you 0. So that I've proven that 7 times 0 equals 0, 8 times 0 equals 0. For example, I'll rewrite it in green over here. 8 times 0. Well, I know 8 has a inverse, that is 1 over 8. So I'll multiply the expression by the inverse of 8, 1 over 8, group them together. This will give you 1 times 0, and 0 times the multiplicative identity will give me 0, because anything times 1 is the same number. Josie times 1 is Josie. 0 times 1 is 0. And we're done with that. Now, we need to look at the case where both numbers are 0. Because we just shown the case when a times b equals 0. We showed the case where a was 0 and b was not 0. But what if both numbers are 0? Well, then basically I would have 0 times 0. Okay. This may seem a little bit confusing at first, but consider this. The additive identity of 0. The additive identity is 0. For example, 7 plus 0 is 7. Anything plus 0 is anything. It's the same thing, basically. Josie plus 0 is Josie. 0 plus 0 is 0. Okay? We add 0 to the additive identity, and we get 0. That's basically it. So I can rewrite this as 0 times 0 plus 0. Because 0 plus 0 is 0. I've already said that like 2,000 times. Distributive law says that we can distribute the zeros out. And so we get 0 times 0 plus 0 times 0. Okay. So far, we've arrived at the green. Let's bring this down. 0 times 0 equals 0 times 0 plus 0 times 0. Okay. It looks like we haven't really gotten anywhere, but this is where the magic reveals itself. Now we use additive inverse. And we have to basically add the inverse of 0 times 0 to 0 times 0. Here's what I mean. Okay, so I've added 0 times 0 to its additive inverse. That's going to give me 0, that's for sure, because anything added to its additive inverse will give you 0. 7 plus -7, that's 0. It's really the same thing as saying 7 minus 7. When you subtract something with its inverse, it's 0. Anyways, what about the other side? Well, I should have kept this in green, but oh well. I get 0 times 0 plus 0 times 0. And remember, since we subtracted 0 times 0 from the left side, now we got to do it to the right. Now look, these two cancel out. They're inverses of each other. Finally, in purple, we get 0 equals 0 times 0 plus 0. But anything plus 0 is anything. So this plus 0 is the same thing as the underlined. And therefore, 0 equals 0 times 0, which is what we wanted to prove. This is why 0 times 0 equals 0. You'll probably hate that number for a while. Just kidding. But that's the reasons why any number times 0 is 0. And that's it, I'm done. So if you liked the video, make sure to click the like button. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content, math or chess related, and I'll see you in the next one.